Hi, my name is Erin, and this is a reading of my writing about text essay called Changing Fate. In the text The Other Westmore, One Name, Two Fates, Westmore provides information on how expectations, environment, and education can influence young children's lives. Throughout the book, Moore presents the reader with knowledge over the events in his life as well as the other Westmore's life, in order for the reader to identify and understand how their lives turned out so differently. Westmore makes it apparent that, although they shared similar influences, these influences directed their lives in two very separate ways. They both grieved differently over their absent fathers, they both handled the drug epidemic in two very distinct ways, and they both received two very different educations. In result, they both led two very different lives. This book showcases cause and effect in a way most of us are usually unable to see. Moore shows us how the decisions both himself and the other Westmore made changed the fate of each of their lives, both for the better and for the worse. This not only allows the reader to acknowledge which choices led to the duo's current positions in life, but also gives the reader a chance to analyze their own life in order to understand how they got to their position as well. The Other Westmore, One Name, Two Fates is a story that illustrates how strongly expectations held by those around us, the environment in which we are exposed to growing up, and the extent to which we receive education can impact our lives and forever change our fates. One of the many factors that can change the course of our lives is the expectations in which we are presumed to live up to. When Moore the author was growing up, his mother had ideas of what kind of person he would be, simply based on who she wanted him to be. Moore writes, "My mom vowed to never let another man put his hands on her. She wouldn't tolerate it in others either." This quote is an example as to the kind of person she expected Moore to become based on her past experience with her ex-husband. Due to this expectation, when Wes punched his sister Nikki at the young age of 3, his mother wanted to punish him in a harsher way than his father allowed. Also, when Wes accidentally hit his sister Shawnee in the lips years later, his mother sent him off to military school. She put these repercussions in place in order for Moore to adhere to his mother's hopes, and in result, he did. However, expectations also influenced the life of the other Westmore. On the account of the neighborhood in which Wes grew up, he was expected to follow in the steps of most of the young boys that came before him, including his brother, and get into the drug game. Nevertheless, his brother Tony had other expectations for him as well. Moore writes, "Tony felt his brother's life could be saved, even if he felt his own had already, at age 14, passed the point of no return. Tony wanted to prevent his brother's life from turning out like his own, and even beat Wes when he found out he was selling drugs years later. However, for Wes, these obstacles Tony put in place didn't cause Wes to fulfill his brother's hopes, and instead, he filled the expectations of the neighborhood. Expectations also shaped my future just the same. Due to my father dropping out of high school and my mother never going to college, my parents expected great things from me and pushed me to do exceptionally well academically in order for me to have a better future. In response to the pushing, I worked hard to live up to the standards my parents set and became the straight-A student they wanted. Of course, as the courses became harder, my grades have slipped to a B a few times in the past, but due to the expectations my parents held for me, I became an excellent student, or in other words, the person they hoped." In addition to expectations, environment also plays a large role in determining one's fate. When Moore and his family moved to the Bronx, Moore's environment changed, and so did his behavior. In the book, Moore writes about a time when one of his friends asks him if he wants to tag a building, and his answer was dependent on the environment in which he was surrounded. Moore writes, "I couldn't say no. First off, Shay was one of the most respected young hustlers in the neighborhood. He was a worker, we all knew that. And while some of the kids were smart enough to be disgusted by what he did, other kids, even the ones who weren't in the game, respected his position. Therefore, whether Moore wanted to or not, he felt he had to due to Shay's position in the community and how he would look if he said no. On account of his environment-dependent answer, this was the first time Moore was almost arrested, and the point at which the reader can clearly see how much his life is unraveling. Even his mother and grandparents began to see a change in Moore's behavior after the move. Moore writes, "She felt my environment needed to change, and my options needed to expand. My grandparents agreed." In order to change this environment, his mother sent him to military school, and, although he didn't care for it much at first, his new environment soon changed his deviant behavior. Moore writes, 3 years ago, I'd been one of the insubordinate kids first entering the gates of Valley Forge. In an ironic turn, I was now one of the ones in charge of them. The other Westmore wasn't as lucky. In Wes's neighborhood, joining the drug game was the norm for young boys his age, and due to his brother Tony, was actually wanting to start a career in drugs. Moore writes, Tony was the closest thing Wes had to a role model, followed by Wes wanted to be just like Tony. However, Tony's influence in Wes's life didn't only push Wes to go into the drug business, but to also take part in violent behaviors. In the book, Moore writes about how Wes and his friends would wrestle, and if he ever slacked, Tony would pull an exhausted Wes to the side, get within inches of his face, and say, Rule number 1, if someone disrespects you, you send a message so fierce that they won't have the chance to do it again. Although Tony always wanted what was best for his brother, these words later caused Wes to be arrested. Moore writes, the police officer yelled at Wes, put down the knife. Wes didn't hear him. Wes continued to move towards the boy. His grip on the knife handle tightened, his forearms flexed. Send a message. Growing up, the environment which encompassed me also had a substantial impact on my life. I grew up in a neighborhood where family was the most important thing. Everyone within a block radius had cookouts and gatherings which were filled with loved ones, and my house seemed to host many of these parties. My parents would invite everyone from their side of the family and everyone within our small block. Due to this, I soon realized how important it was to always surround yourself with people who you love and to always be yourself when trying to make new friends. This is something I've kept with me thus far, causing me to always be true to who I am without worry of what those around me will think. This has led me to build friendships that will last a lifetime, which, in result, has allowed me to always have support when I need it. Apart from expectations and environment, education can also determine the outcome of one's life. When Moore and his family moved to the Bronx, Moore started attending a school filled with mostly white students, which later caused him problems with his social life. Moore writes, I was becoming too rich for the kids from the neighborhood and too poor for the kids at school. I had forgotten how to act naturally, thinking way too much in each situation and getting tangled in the contradictions between my two worlds. This made going to school feel more like a chore to Moore than something that would benefit him in his future. Thus, he stopped going. Moore writes, it's tough to do well in school as an 11-year-old when you're picking and choosing which days to go. His lack of education caused Moore to spend more time on the streets, allowing him more opportunities to be influenced by his environment and caused him to begin indulging in deviant behavior. However, after being sent to military school by his mother, he began receiving a well-rounded education and even went to college. Moore writes, I'd been accepted at Johns Hopkins University to complete my undergraduate degree, which I had begun in junior college at Valley Forge. Once Moore began receiving a proper education, many doors were opened involving his future, and he began to clean up his act. Unfortunately, the other Wes never cleaned up his. Wes was sent to the juvenile detention facility before finishing high school due to attempted murder charges. After he was released, he went back to high school, but didn't last long. Moore writes, he was 2 years older than the other kids in his grade from repeating a grade and losing time locked up. Teachers already dealing with overcrowded classrooms didn't have time to teach Wes the basics he missed. Wes's attendance became sporadic, and once his first child was born, he just stopped going. This drove Wes into the drug game even more. Moore writes, not surprisingly, without a high school diploma or job training, and with a criminal record, Wes found it almost impossible to find a job to support his growing family. This obviously caused Wes to get back into the drug game, which would result into a life he could never come back from. For me, education has led me to find my best friends and has helped me discover who I am and who I want to be. Due to the education which I received, I realized how much I love science and how much I enjoyed learning about the human body. It has helped me in my decision on becoming a nurse and has opened my mind to even possibly becoming more. My education has also granted me with a chance to meet people similar to myself and has helped me in making friends who will forever be a part of who I am. In conclusion, a person's life will always differ from those of others depending on the expectations which are held for them by either their family, friends, or neighborhood, the environment in which they grow up and learn to adapt, and based on the amount of education they receive. In the text The Other Westmore, One Name, Two Fates, Moore writes about two young boys, one being himself, and how their different choices in life led to one being free and experiencing life for all it has to offer, while the other will spend the rest of his life behind bars. People are set up for either success or failure depending on where they are born, But those people can overcome these presumptions by working hard in achieving their goals, or by losing control over themselves. These two men have shown me how drastically even the smallest of events can change a person's life, while simultaneously allowing me to explore and analyze the decisions that have brought me to this point in my life thus far. Although most people may not be aware, everything that makes a person who they are is extremely dependent on the influence present in the choices they make.